Greetings, beautiful friends, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and also author of the book, A Life to Die For, and also one of the contributing authors to the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Today, we are embarking on episode number 194, and the title of this one is The Enlightenment Journey. Now, almost everyone wants to be happier, smarter, wiser, more masterful about their lives. And most of us move from one level to the next almost automatically, even if we have to go through some difficult struggles or challenges in order to get there. So this process we call growth. It's pretty natural. We all deal with it. And the concept of enlightenment is actually quite similar. Although some people have a romantic idea of enlightenment being some kind of an end state that is a desirable place to shoot for, the truth is that enlightenment is really a journey rather than a destination. At least that's my perspective. It can take a very long time to become enlightened. Indeed, some people believe it can take anywhere from one to an infinite number of lifetimes. Well, maybe not infinite, but a very large number, let's say. But the important thing, I believe, is to participate fully in your life, no matter whether you have one of them or many of them, and get the most out of it that you possibly can, and to be as happy and as fulfilled as possible as you go. That's kind of my perspective. So today, we're going to talk about the enlightenment journey with some interesting detail, I think. My guest for this week's episode is a licensed psychologist and integrative spiritual coach whose spiritual journey has awakened her own deep desire for enlightenment. She's going to share with us today her perspective on the path of enlightenment and bring a lot of wisdom to our space in the bargain. So please join me in welcoming the delightful and lovely Linda Marsanico to today's show. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, David. It's so lovely to be here.
Look at that. You're there. It looks like I have 3 instances of you on the thing now. Oh, you raised your hand. Can I?
I didn't need to raise my hand.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I don't know what's going on. You're here 3 times. How do you do that? You bring 3 of your personas into one space simultaneously. That is amazing.
Maybe that's some energy floating around.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Well, anyway, I'm glad you're here. Welcome. And we're going to have a delightful conversation, I'm sure. I am imagining that there was a specific defining moment in your life, a wake-up call maybe, if you will, that started you on your path towards enlightenment. Why don't you take a minute or two to, start us off by sharing a little bit about that path and what it is that makes this topic so important to you.
As I write in my book, The A Train to Sedona, I was sitting on the wood floor of my living room, looking at a book my sister had given me on yoga. I closed my eyes, and I knew in that instance that I was connected to all that is, that universe, creator was surrounding me, with me, supporting me. It was such the beginning of my enlightenment journey. At the time, I was part of soon after that, part of a spiritual group where we chanted and meditated. And of course, when you meditate and chant with other people, the energy is so powerful. I knew nothing of what people were speaking of. Here I had my PhD in psychology. It was like they were speaking Chinese about spirituality and authors and situations. And I listened like a sponge. And I read many, many books and had a thirst to move forward, to know more, to be kinder, to be more loving. Later on, I coined the phrase. I was talking to a client of mine who asked me, Linda, what should I do in between sessions to grow? And I said, choose love over fear.
Mhm.
And he did. And he was on my mailing list, and he wrote me and he said, choosing love over fear is wonderful, but I add action, and that gives me momentum. So choosing love over fear is part of the enlightenment journey. Because really, spiritually, love is all there is. But we are in third dimension and we have an ego, and we have all these negative emotions of the ego, which stand in the way of our hearing the voice of Creator. That these negative emotions stand in the way of our being present. So we can heal them through writing, through some of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, or we could seek professional help.
Mhm.
The idea is to move toward our compassionate self, the loving, compassionate self that we truly are, but have forgotten. And the task is to get to that place. That's why we're here. If we fail, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and we try again. Now, I wanted to give a couple of examples. My mother
Well,
could.
before you do that, I want to just kind of, first of all, I want to make some observations
Sure.
that I'm noticing here. We've been on for like 5 minutes, and I have heard you speaking for maybe 2 or 3 of those, and I haven't heard a single ah, or interjection, shall we say. You are clearly an accomplished speaker. You are clearly someone who has made it. I guess if you're a professor, well, are you a professor? I know you got a PhD in psychology. Are you a professor in college, or?
I am not. I have been a member of Toastmasters
Oh, well, there you go. That
since
explains it.
2013. And as we speak, David, there is somebody counting the ums and the ahs and the clutch words. And
Exactly right.
ask.
Exactly. Yeah, I've gone through Toastmasters. I've got my Distinguished Toastmaster Award. It was a great experience. I would highly recommend it for anybody. But I was just noticing how clear your speech was, your presentation as you were speaking, and I just want to honor that and to acknowledge it, because so many people, they have like, uh, mm, like this, like that, and they don't speak English anymore. They speak some weird variant that is very hard to understand, and it's actually kind of irritating to listen to. So I'm so glad to have someone like you who's practiced this and who's done so much work. I mean, it tells me right then and there, if you've done that much work just to learn how to be presentable in your speech, you clearly have done the same kind of work on your soul to
Thank you.
bring your soul more to bear. So that's what I wanted to say.
And going to Toastmasters is part of loving myself, because my reason for writing my book was to have my voice be heard. I was a very quiet child. I'm the oldest of 4. I was the observer. I went into a field, psychology, where I listen, and I started to get itchy for wanting to speak and to have people listen to me. So hence the book. But also, the book is about sharing my continuing journey toward enlightenment in the hope that it would help people on their journey. Because I'm writing just one way to get there, and there are so many ways to get to enlightenment, but this is just my recipe.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, and coming back to what you were saying, I mean, this idea of choosing love over fear, and of course, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of beautiful wisdom there. It sounds so easy, choosing love over fear. But the truth is, most of us, as you said, most of us have pretty powerful egos, and those egos do tend to get in the way, making the choice of love all that much more difficult.
Yeah.
So while it sounds real simple to say choose fear over love and you will find enlightenment, I think that is a true statement. The ego mind ain't going to have anything to do with that, because the ego mind has its own agenda.
It
And the
does.
moment you start choosing love over fear, what happens is you are preventing the ego mind from having its own expression, because fear is its playground. Fear is where it chooses to live. Think about that. It picks all the negatives, and it looks at all the reasons that things are not working. It finds fault with everything. I mean, it's a pattern matching device beyond parallel. And when it sees something that doesn't match its expected pattern, look out. That's when the complaints start. You know?
And this ego and this third dimension that we live in with such troublesome happenings, there's so much angst and hate and you name it.
Yeah.
As soon as we get into the fear, we get right into that, the collective uncomfortableness.
Exactly.
So when I jump to joy, I don't know whether it's the fourth dimension, but it feels joyful. And I say to some of my clients, jump to joy, jump to the fourth dimension, get out of the third dimension when you can. As soon as you realize that you are in fear, jump to joy, to gratitude, to faith, to love, to compassion, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful teaching, very important teaching. And, as I said, getting there, just jumping to joy is not as easy as many people think it is. It is easy. You talked about meditation and some of the things you do there. One of the things that I have learned is fear doesn't like peace and quiet. It doesn't like that kind of space. So it doesn't, I find anyway, when I'm in a place of serenity and meditative, what's the word I want to say? Meditative contemplation, then my ego mind tends to get quieter and the fear doesn't seem to enter into that space. When I allow the chaos and the confusion and all the other things to happen in my life and to have an impact on me, and when I focus my attention on those things, that creates the space for the ego to activate and fear to come in. So it's a really powerful thing to teach. At the same time, people need to understand that getting there might require some effort, might require some practice. And meditation is one of the best things that you can do to get there.
Especially since what we focus on grows. And what I find very helpful with choosing love over fear when I'm in fear, and lately there's a lot of fear coming in, I use the mantra. And I love the I am. It's like a genie in a bottle.
Absolutely.
I am calm. I am joyful. I am safe. I am fabulous. I am, and I go on with the I am, choosing that and so that my mind is only thinking of that.
Yeah.
And it is very, very helpful.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I had a program for quite a while called The Magic of I Am. I would send out daily affirmations to people, and I've kept all of those. I've had, thousands of meditations that I created that all begin with I am. And as long as we're talking about affirmations, we might as well help people understand that if you want to create a powerful affirmation, there's really 4 elements. The first is it starts with I am. The second is always in present tense. Don't make your affirmation about the future or that you're not going to do something in the past. That's the third thing, is it can't be negative. You can't use negative terminology. It's always got to be positive. And then finally, it's got to be about you as a spiritual being of light and love. If you can combine those 4 elements together, then it's easy to create powerful affirmations that can resonate for you. And one of the things that I learned about doing these affirmations, I would send these things out, and I would also tell people, I say, look, maybe this affirmation doesn't resonate for you. And that's okay. Journal on that. Find out, what is it about this affirmation? What is it raising? What's it bringing up for me that maybe I have not looked at before? For example, you mentioned one affirmation, I am fabulous. Some people might have a hard time believing that within their mind. I am fabulous. All right. What comes up for you when You say, I am fabulous. And just notice. And then what can you do to maybe overcome that, whatever that is that's coming up, so that you can begin to feel more fabulous? Beautiful.
Also, when we use the I am, it is said that we get an electromagnetic charge to our higher self. And when I say the I am, I could feel the charge.
That's beautiful.
It's just so grounding and loving and reminding me that I'm never alone.
Yeah.
Because we are never alone, but sometimes I need reminding.
That's right. Well, yeah, and that's an interesting perspective too, and not being alone. I mean, the ego mind can remind us that, well, hey, well, I'm separate. There's nobody else in this room. I'm here by myself, you know.
Yeah.
And the ego mind likes to say stuff like that. And so it's easy then to fall into that trap of feeling lonely.
Mm-hmm.
But lonely and alone are not the same thing. And when we understand that it's just a temporary feeling, in reality, when we raise our vibration and we come back to the present moment, we realize, I shouldn't say we because other people are not going to have exactly the same experience, but I realize that that's when I know I'm connected. And you mentioned that right at the beginning of your introduction. You said, I knew in that moment that I was connected to all that is. Well, describe a little bit about how you came to that knowing. What happened in your body that you felt so certain that you were connected to all that is?
I think that from my prior lifetimes, from my prior experiences, this was all waiting to be provoked. Now, we all are loved beyond our imagination. We all are part of things, but we forget that. That moment was there like the seed that is enveloped in a covering, and it burst open. It burst open so that because I was ready to understand that the beauty of having faith and knowledge, of being, some people would say, a cell in God's fabric. Other people say that God's energy is wrapped around every cell in our body. So to come into that knowledge, I had to be ready. There was a time when I didn't believe in faith. I lost my faith. And I remember somebody came into my life, a very gifted clairvoyant reverend, and he restored my faith by his integrity, his gifts. And I knew, and I told him, you restored my faith that I can have faith. So there were different times in my life where I believed different things. So this sitting on the floor of my living room in Brooklyn, on this hardwood floor, looking at this yoga book, was a very significant revelation. Joyful.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you had that kind of awakening in a moment like that. You know, I think everybody, if we are honest with ourselves, we have many moments in our lives when we have the opportunity to wake up. And sometimes we do wake up, and sometimes we say, it's just coincidence, and we just write it off. And so somewhere along the way, it's like you say, you have to be ready. You know, sooner or later, the universe is going to keep bringing stuff to you because you've had this arrangement with the universe since the day you were born. The universe is going to keep bringing stuff to you, and it might start off soft and gentle little nudges, and this and that and the other thing, and if you don't respond, then it kind of escalates.
It does, yeah.
It escalates, and so I've had some pretty heavy duty wake up calls in my lifetime. And even those didn't always work. So it's nice to know that something as simple as sitting on a floor and just seeing a yoga book and having that awaken something within you, that is a beautiful experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, it was years later that I saw this spiritual healer. But I was at that point just ready. You know, we have free will, and universe is not going to come in and compromise that free will. So when I wrote the book, I came upon tips which gave a structure to my path. And the first, if I may share them.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first is having an intention to be on the spiritual path. Then we go on to an attitude of responsibility for what I create. Then understanding what my thoughts are, using prayer and meditation, developing the ego, the use of assertion, sense of humor, altered behavior patterns, healing the little boys and girls within, stepping back from the ego to ask, what would love do now? Identifying fantasies and longings that don't serve us anymore. Having faith that we are all connected, and using energy efficiently and deliberately. I am currently working on all of those things. The idea in the path is to let go of what doesn't serve. Because here I am I'm reaching toward enlightenment, but my negativity, my conflicts, my regrets are all pulling me back. So let me heal them, let me acknowledge them, and let them loose. And as we make that intention, we give universe permission to send things in. And as you said, it'll escalate until it really hurts more.
Yeah. And it's never meant to hurt in a hurtful way. It's meant to draw attention to something that isn't working. I think that's the ultimate way of describing it. Yeah, and I love the way this all works, actually. It's pretty amazing to me. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your book. Now, I know it's not published yet, but it's due to be published. And when do you expect to have that released?
I'm hoping in 3 months.
Okay, 3 months time, and it's called The A Train to Sedona.
Yes.
And can you please help us understand the significance of the title?
The significance of the title is a metaphor. So I put it on Twitter. This is really funny. I put it on Twitter, and the book cover shows the mountains of Sedona and an old-fashioned train. And I had this focus group of some millennials, and they liked this old train. So this fellow in New York City writes, "That's not the A train. I was born and bred in New York." And I wrote him, I said, "It's just a metaphor, because Sedona represents peace and love and spirituality, a calmness, a groundedness."
Yeah.
And that's where I'm bringing my readers to. On the path of enlightenment, as we let go of what doesn't serve us, we're getting closer to loving ourselves, loving Creator. We have a closer relationship because we're getting rid of the barriers. So that's the significance of the title. In the book, the book is an intimate memoir. And as I mentioned before, I wanted my voice to be heard, and I wanted to help others if they could find some gems from my failures. So I talk about stories of what I've been experiencing and trips. And there's one story I'd like to share about the power of love. I was in a condo, and on the third floor, 3 floors, on the third floor, the couple had a baby, and they wanted to put their carriage, and did put their carriage right in front of my door. So if I fell forward out of my door, my head would hit the carriage. And I asked them, "Could you put the carriage in the vestibule? Could you put it up the steps?" No, no, no. I spoke to the husband, I spoke to the wife. We were very unhappy. There was such negativity in the building. And I, because I was so polarized, didn't even think that I could perhaps help out by folding the carriage and helping them. But that's how polarized we were. So I think I must have had a communication with Creator, because I was coming home from work, I see the carriage, and I started to say, I'm a bodhisattva. Now, a bodhisattva is an enlightened being. I'm not enlightened, but we can all aspire. I aspire, we can all aspire to it. I'm a bodhisattva. I'm a bodhisattva. I'm a bodhisattva. And a miracle happened. They moved the carriage. So love, the love energy, is a catalyst. It opens doors. It's an awesome vibration. So in the book, I share stories like that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And so it's coming out in June, I guess.
I'm hoping soon. March now, April, May. That would be lovely. Yes, that would be a lovely month.
And so, just for clarity, you're publishing through the Dream Sculpt team, is that right?
Yes, with
Which
Julia.
is the same people I published my book with. So this is interesting scenario. And
Yes.
when you first signed up to be a guest on this show, I didn't realize that you were part of the Dream Sculpt family. So that's a nice synchronicity there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That we have something in common. Yes.
Yeah, great. Well, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing this book, and I hope I get a copy of it, signed, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you. I
Yeah.
have your email address, and I will send you a copy.
Yeah, we'll sort those details out later. But I want to talk more about this whole concept of the Enlightenment journey, which, the book is about that. But I want to try and bring this back so that our viewers can maybe learn something today that they can begin to practice on their own. And I know that in your write-up, you talked about compassion and love. These are, everything that you wrote is kind of totally aligned with my entire life mastery paradigm. It's really kind of cool how all this worked out. And everything you've been saying so far, I'm resonating like 100% with it. So this is really great. But anyway, compassion and love. And you like to say that compassion and love are sisters. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Love and compassion are both felt in the heart, which is the seat of love.
Mm-hmm.
I once did a blog, and I got to thinking about the egg. So you have an egg, and you have the yellow and the white. Both are different color. Both are described differently, created differently. But if you remove the yellow, you don't have an egg. If you remove the white, you don't have an egg. I think of love and compassion like that.
Mm-hmm.
That are sisters, soul sisters. The movement toward enlightenment is realizing that we're basically love. Now, it's simple. There's a blog that I did on the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love. Very simple. All you need is love. But how do you get there? Now, in that song, they have the most complex music. Bach, guitar players, singers, the national anthem. And for me, my interpretation is that they show the complexity underlying the simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, to remember that we're love and to become love requires the sense of humor that one needs. Because compassion is an everyday experience. We're meeting people every day, and people are sent to us to provoke.
Oh God, yes, don't I know that?
So they provoke. And so my mother could irritate me. She could say something and I could feel irritated, own that. If I step back in compassion, I could see her grand characteristics and her warts and pimples. but see her entirety in compassion. If I'm in a store and the sales clerk is on a cell phone delaying the whole line, I could choose to be sulky and angry, or I could take the opportunity to meditate or to do nothing, like I could in an airport where a plane has been delayed. You have time to do anything you want to do in compassion. I could be behind a car doing 40 miles an hour in the fast lane. I could curse and honk my horn, or I could maybe flick my lights, see if they move. If not, change lanes, be compassionate. We're making choices like that every day. But as I said before, if we fail, we get lots of chances without judgment from Creator. Not to punish us, but to get us, to help us, because we've given permission.
Right.
We've given permission to do so.
Yeah. Well, you know, the idea of choice is a very important one. It's one of the 10 pillars of my life mastery paradigm, by the way. Choice is like number 2. Anyway, the reason choice is so important is because choice happens in every single moment.
Yes.
It happens continually. And you were talking at the very beginning about choosing love over fear. Well, that is a choice that you can be making in every single moment, choosing love over fear, choosing love over fear, choosing love over fear. And if you are choosing love over fear, then compassion is an easy path to take. If you're choosing fear over love, then you're probably going to have a hard time with that.
Yes.
Choosing compassion. You're probably more likely to fall into the other camp where you are cursing and maybe reacting to whatever it is going on. And so it's a constant thing. Choice is always there. The second thing about choice that a lot of people don't even think about is every single choice that you make, no matter how insignificant it might be, has consequences. It produces a result, and therefore it has consequences.
Yes.
So you are responsible for those consequences. Whether they were unintended or not, that's irrelevant. You're responsible for them. And one of the things that we need to do as enlightened beings is to simply stand up and say, yes, I made that choice. Yes, that was the consequence that ensued. I didn't intend for that consequence. I see now that I can choose something different going forward. You know?
That's so,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's so important, because in the interaction, somebody says something to me I don't like. I could talk down to them. I could be disrespectful, or I can say to myself, let me look at myself in the mirror. What do I remember about me? What can I learn about me? Because this interaction is for me. I mean, our spiritual journey is all about us.
Exactly right.
A person has their own, they're doing their own life. So if we look at that in those ways, look at ourselves, take responsibility, a lot of our shadow self will come up in interactions. Now, there was a situation, I was at a dinner party, and one of the guests kind of overruled a subtle position that I held in the hopes of looking strong. And I let it go. I didn't know what to say about it, and I didn't realize how upset I was about it. So I drove home, and at the time I was in a garage where I had to back up into the garage. I had to park alongside of the car next to the garage and then back in. So I pull up, and there's a man in a car. I flicked my lights. He moved up. I didn't realize that he moved up sufficiently. I started to depress the lights with such rage because he was blocking me, I thought. And as I'm going like this, I realized how upset I was with the dinner guest.
Mm-hmm.
I literally felt blocked at the dinner party and blocked over here. Now, I was able to, I let it be. I could move back and get into my garage. The idea for me is to dismantle the unconscious root of being blocked. by doing freeing things, by putting myself in open situations, by being bold, by being interviewed so that I'm not blocked. And also by looking at myself and understanding who I am. Those two things are very important in bringing the unconscious to conscious, because the enlightenment journey is about bringing the unconscious to conscious so that we know more of who we are. I mean, Merlin said, if we look at ourselves fully, what we don't like will soon disappear.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is more often than not, what we don't like about ourselves shows up in other people. This is the nature of projection. This is the nature of how shadow works. And very often when we see something we don't like in another person, it is, as you pointed out, an opportunity to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And say, well, what is it about myself that I'm not seeing?
Yeah.
That I'm choosing not to see, that I am consciously or unconsciously trying to hide.
Right.
And why am I trying to do that? What is the pain associated with that situation that I'm trying to avoid?
Right.
And every single one of us, again, coming back to choice, we have the opportunities here. And I like to think of choices as opportunities because every single one of them is. It's an opportunity to see an aspect of ourselves that previously we didn't like so much, and that's why it ended up in shadow. But now to come back with that compassion and love you were talking about, treat that part of ourselves like a little child who didn't know any better at the time and was doing his best or her best to, meet with daddy or mommy's approval, and found a strategy that seemed to work and carried that strategy forward into adult life when it no longer works. That's essentially all shadow is. And when we can find those parts of ourselves, we should be dancing, as you say, jumping for joy.
Yeah.
Because it's an opportunity to see an aspect of ourselves in a whole new light and to maybe find the gift, the beauty, the magic, the love, the amazing fabulosity that exists within that part of ourselves.
Yes.
And then embrace it, love it, and bring it back in and integrate it. That's a powerful, powerful process.
I love working with the children within, acting silly. I love Avenger movies. That's my child. I take myself to the Avenger movies. And with my clients, having them write to their younger self, because we are the parents of those younger selves now. There's no one who is going to bring them up to a joyful place so that we can integrate them into who we are and keep them happy. I'd love to happy. I mean, a lot of creative people have that happy child drawing beautiful drawings and creating beautiful costumes. And it's knowing who we are. And you were saying before about the pain of this, and this can be very painful, but there are techniques. There are the wonderful stages of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. We could go in through skipping shock and denial. Well, denial could be bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance, running the pain through those understandings so that we can be ready to let them go. We have to be ready to let them go. And of course, that creates a space for a new me.
That's right. Yeah.
And that can be scary. There's a new space. What do I do with that space?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. You're talking a little bit about pain here, and I think pain has two different aspects, or maybe there's more than two, but two that come to my mind immediately. One is pain hurts, and so consequently we avoid doing something. And pain then can be useful in the physical realm when you're doing something that, let's say you're walking or running or whatever, and you get a pain in your leg. It's a signal that something's not quite right. You need to stop doing what you're doing, and you better stop now before it gets worse. But every time pain happens in that way, it's a signal or a symptom that you have an opportunity to fix something. Now, the other kind of pain is more emotional, I guess. And it doesn't feel quite the same in my experience anyway. It doesn't feel the same as physical pain. It's kind of like I don't know how to describe it even. To me, it feels like there's this pull that is just drawing me down. That energetic pull that's coming from in here somewhere, and it just seems to be pulling me down, and I kind of slouch and close up, and it's that contractual or contractional feeling, And so those are the two different kinds of pain that I'm familiar with. And I think it's the second kind that is more difficult for us because it's not obvious what we're supposed to do with it. And as you say, DABDA is one approach that you can use to deal with pain. But another way is just to go into it and just meditate on it. Just let yourself come right into the pain.
Right.
Because the moment you do that, the moment you bring your attention into it, it seems to dissipate on its own because you give it permission to exist by being there and observing it. And when you give it permission, it just simply says, "Oh, thank you for noticing me," And slowly, it may be not immediate kind of reaction. There might be some tears, there might be some sobbing, there might be some body shaking, there might be some various other actions that take place. But eventually, what happens is that pain dissipates. That's been my experience.
That's a beautiful description, David.
Yeah, thank you.
And it takes courage to face the pain.
Yeah. And I think that the idea of going within, you don't have to wait for pain to happen in order to go within. You can do that anytime you want to. Just simply meditate. Take the time to come present, say, what's going on? One of the best meditations, I just learned this recently from my son. I've been doing the other kinds of meditation, but this one really works. It's a very simple one. And I'm not sure who invented it. The man's name is not coming to my mind, but it's about focusing on the sensations in your body. Now, when you sit down to meditate, you might have, pain in your back. Well, there's an obvious sensation that you can go and you can just draw your attention down into that part of your back and just look at it and say, do you have a message for me? Is there a story you want me to hear? Is there something I should know? And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But what happens is just by bringing attention there, that pain kind of goes away, and then another sensation arises. Like you might notice, oh yeah, now I'm sitting here and I can feel the pressure of the seat on my right sits bone. Okay, what is my body trying to tell me about that? And if you continue that, what happens is after a while, the sensations get less and less and less and less intense. And you really have to look to find something. Oh, I can feel a little itch on my cheek. What's that about? And it becomes like a fascinating discovery. But what's really happening in this is you are being 100% present to everything that's going on in your body right now. And you're not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. And that's what meditation's all about, is about getting here and now and being in connection with who you really are.
As you were describing being present with the pain, and you said this as well, you really are getting to know yourself. If there's a message from the pain, what can it tell you? And to go through your body, because the body houses, according to Candace Pert, and I would agree, the body houses the unconscious.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
So if something comes in, it comes in from the earth to the heart to the brain. If I disavow it, it goes to the appropriate part of the body. If I take it in, then I have an experience that I can deal with. So when you're talking about the body and the messages from the body, I think that's a very powerful intervention with that.
Right. Well, the other part is, we talked a little bit about shadow, and I think what happens is when we're young, we have some kind of an experience which is an unpleasant experience, and our objective in life at that point is to try and make mommy and daddy happy, try to keep them from getting angry at us and from hurting us and all that kind of stuff. In a way, we're protecting our small selves. And what happens is, as we get older, we start to push. You mentioned the word disavow. That's a great word. I like that word. We sometimes deny it, we sometimes disown it, we sometimes disavow it, we sometimes repress it. All of those are different levels of consciousness acting on some external thing that's happening to us. And when we do any of those things, we're basically pushing it into the background. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't just disappear energetically out here somewhere. As you say, sometimes that energy goes down into the body, and then it can create other kinds of problems, manifesting in even ways such as cancer or other forms of disease.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's something that people just don't realize. They think, oh, I just got cancer. Now I got to go take all this, this chemotherapy and stuff. How often do people actually go and look at the deep, dark underbelly of whatever disease they might have to try and uncover what may have caused it in the first place? Because if you can do that, if you can get to the root of it, you might be able to find a way to heal the underlying cause, and then the cancer itself will go away. Now, I can't say that for sure because, cancer has a life of its own too. But the point is, if we take the time to look inside and uncover all those dark parts of ourselves and shine a light on it and bring some love and compassion and forgiveness to it, then what we do is we open the space for healing to take place.
Yes, we do. And I know people who have healed their own cancer through prayer and meditation.
Yeah.
And the body serves us in many ways. And, self-knowledge is part of that enlightenment journey.
Right.
With all its bumps. I saw Anne Lamont's quote, if you're taking the enlightenment journey, the one that you posted, better take snacks and magazines. In a sense, you might say it's a bumpy road, but I think it's important to have a sense of humor about it.
Of course. What would life be like without a sense of humor? I mean, every time I laugh, I feel better, even in the darkest of circumstances. I mean, how about you? Do you experience that too? Do you find something happens when you start laughing?
Oh, yes, I feel joyful, and the endorphins in the brain kick in. It's good for the immune system, and it sends out, because we're broadcast journalists, right? We're sending out this wonderful energy for all to feel and experience, and of course we're in the aggregate, we're in the community, and in the power of Creator, we add something very important, very important indeed.
And speaking of important, I think one element that we haven't really focused on yet, but I think we should, without putting any pressure on ourselves, by the way, the idea of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a really powerful force. I personally think it's one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Mm-hmm. And what's your perspective on forgiveness? Why don't you share a little bit how you see it and how we can use it to improve our lives and help us move along this path of enlightenment?
I see forgiveness as a process. I can't say, I'm going to forgive, because I need to have self-love. I need to know myself. But with the will, I might need to develop more self-love. I might need a new job. I might need a new relationship. And with that resilience, be able to forgive. And I think that it's important that when we can't forgive yet, that we say, I'm working on this, God, Creator, I'm working on this. Please let me know all I need to know about this so that I can be helped. I'd love to talk to God that way. Please let me know all I need to know about this. Because the I forgive needs to come from a personal point of strength. Again, there's a void there. And if I am not a victim, then who am I? And that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
You also need to remember that if I don't forgive someone, I'm holding that energy and I'm being connected to that person through that energy. And that resonates in every cell of my body. And we have something like 50 plus trillion cells.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness is essential for compassion.
Right.
And with forgiveness, we're growing that feeling of being closer to Creator, more connected. Everything is a process where we're doing all this work and things are subtly changing within us.
Right.
I heard somebody say yesterday they had compassion for a relative that they had never said before. And I knew that they were developing self-love. I knew that they had a resilience so that they could make that statement.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Right. I think one of the things that holds people back from forgiving is the belief that if I forgive this person, I am letting him or her off the hook. I am somehow saying that what they did was okay. I'm somehow making it acceptable, their behavior. And that's really not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is about saying, okay, this person did something, it hurt me, I feel the pain. You mentioned the idea of being a victim. And often, whenever there's an event that seems to require forgiveness, there's usually a perpetrator victim dynamic that happens. And yeah, I can hold all kinds of grudges and desires for revenge and wishes for that person to just kind of vaporize and dry up and go away and die. I could wish for that. But what am I doing?
Mm.
I'm really giving away all my power to that person who is not even in my life anymore. And not only that, the person who committed the crime that victimized me may not even be aware that he or she did that, you know? And so all I'm doing is I'm holding on to this energy and I'm creating this dynamic in my head, this chaos, when all I need to do is say, if I can just take a pause, come back to the reality, understand that I am not saying what that person did was okay. I'm not making any statement about that. I am simply choosing now to release all my attachment to revenge or judgment or all that stuff. I want to release that person out of my life so that energetic connection is no longer there. That's really what I think forgiveness is about. And if people could remember that, I think they would find it much easier to forgive in the first place.
Yes, it's all about us, right? It's all about.
Absolutely.
And with the forgiveness, I don't think you can see my arm. If I put my arm, the spontaneity of my arm,
Right.
forgiveness would interfere with some of my spontaneity because I would be invested in anger and revenge, and I would be limited by the feelings of the ego. And I
Right.
couldn't, I would lose that freedom. As you said, I'd give my power up.
Exactly.
So the power that can be restored by saying, this is not going to bog me down anymore. As you said, I don't accept it, but I am going to remove the charge and let it go.
Yeah. Well, and then let's talk about that acceptance now, because that's another key point. I often tell people, I say, look, just because you accept something as it is, doesn't mean you agree with it, doesn't mean you don't want to change it, doesn't mean you don't have some energy about it. It just simply means that you are willing to accept, all right, this is what it is right now. That's all. That's all acceptance is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, and in particular, if you can accept yourself as you are right now, you've already begun the process of enlightenment. That is like the first step. Well, awareness is the first step, but acceptance is right there. It's right after it. So acceptance is kind of like the precursor to forgiveness.
It's on the road.
Yep.
Road.
Yeah. So once we've done that, once we learn how to forgive, and I like to teach people, as you get better and better at forgiving, then sooner or later you reach this point where you can start practicing what I call pre-forgiveness. Because you know damn right that sooner or later someone's going to come along and do something to upset you. So you might as well forgive them in advance. And that's what pre-forgiveness is about. If you can have that mindset of forgiving before it happens, then it becomes so much easier when the event actually occurs.
You would have a forgiving nature. You would be going through life accepting
right.
people's foibles.
Right. Yeah. And then people say, well, but there are some things that are just unforgivable, like child molestation and stuff like that. And I said, yes, those are horrific events that happened. Absolutely. No child should experience that kind of thing. And hatred for the person who does it is not going to heal that situation.
Right.
And in fact, that hatred for the person who does it may have more harm on the child. So we have to learn to love even the ugliest things in our world. And we have to learn to forgive. Otherwise, we're just going to continue building more and more of the same stuff that we're experiencing today.
Compassion can go a long way.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings us to our ultimate goal, which is, I think, to elevate ourselves into a higher level of consciousness.
Yes. Which we do as we continue to let go of what doesn't serve. You know, I see compassion as a portal into stillness and creativity, getting closer and closer to the absolute closest we could get to Creator. And that would be a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah. Now, in your reading, did you ever read David Hawkins, any of his books?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing writer. And I think in his own way, he was an enlightened being.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And there are many others as well. I mean, Paramahansa Yogananda is another one that I think is well worth reading, who talks, he's just an amazing writer. But these people, they have seen things in a way that maybe you or I, or even other people who are watching this, haven't seen them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful to watch, or to look at someone else's perspective and understand what they're seeing, and then maybe deciding, yeah, that's a pretty cool perspective. I think I'm going to try to adopt that. You know?
David Hawkins influenced me very, very much in his theory of wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about the law of special dependence upon initial conditions, and a boat going from, say, Southampton to New York off course, just a few degrees, but not getting to the destination.
Mm-hmm.
And he compared that to a negative worldview, and how a consistent negative worldview affects every system of the body. Sooner
Exactly.
or later, continued aches, pains, disease. And he said, if this is true, then a reversal of that in the invisible world of attitudes and thoughts and feelings, with a positive worldview, wellness could be achieved.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, when we are affected by a negative worldview in every single aspect, we are also affected with a positive worldview in every single aspect. It's a choice. We come back to that idea of choice. The other thing is, you mentioned about this journey in a boat from point A to point B. I often think of, if you take an airplane that's flying from Los Angeles to New York, it is off course approximately 100% of the time. And yet somehow it manages to get there. Have you ever noticed that? Well, why is that? It's because this airplane is constantly checking, where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? If we were to do that the same way an airplane does it, can you imagine how amazing we would be?
We would be self-correcting, and we would be on that road to enlightenment, choosing love over fear, being aware of ourselves. And I think we might be even happy, joyful. The journey.
Oh, yeah, I believe that's true.
I know where I am.
Right. Well, Linda, it's been almost an hour here. I'm going to have to wrap this up. It's really been a beautiful conversation. I'm just so grateful that you're here and sharing your amazing wisdom. I'm wondering if you have a few words that you'd like to share, final words before I close out.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me. And I want to thank everybody who's going to watch this recording. It's been such a pleasure to share my ideas and to discuss these ideas with David, as we share a lot of similarities. And maybe we could be helpful to you. Remembering that my journey is the way I describe it, but your journey can be the way you describe yours. You can be the creator. Yet maybe one thing I've said could be helpful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Linda. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate your energy, and I appreciate your wisdom. And I want to thank all of you for watching today's program. Just remember, you can catch the recording of this and every other one of my shows on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I truly hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and very soon you're probably going to receive an email from the Learn It Live platform asking you to fill out a survey. Please fill that out and give us some feedback so we know that you're continuing to get value out of these presentations. And finally, I'd like to remind everybody to continue practicing on a daily basis, perhaps multi-times a day, what I call the Life Mastery Mantra. And it goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.